morning comes, and with it, a renewal, a heightening of perception. Yet few of us carry the joy of the morning forward into the day. There is a world of beauty and a world of work, our attitudes seem to imply, and these two worlds should be completely separate from each other. That isn't true everywhere, of course. Some industries have begun to try to erase some of the old distinctions between living and making a living. You can sense it in the surroundings, in the places where their people work, places which are not simply impersonal shells of glass and mortar and steel, but living celebrations of architectural genius. In this case, the genius of Eero Saarinen. You can sense it too in the art and the artifacts with which such structures are often graced. Work and works of art are thrust into everyday relationship with each other and found to be complementary sides of a common coin, the human need for a means of individual expression. Nowhere is the link between art and the art of living better expressed than in those instances where the abstractions of sculpture serve as the counterpoint to the practicalities of architecture. An example is Hill Arches, the work of Henry Moore, gracing the grounds of an industrial headquarters building in the Middle West. In such a setting, art serves not only to enrich and inspire, but also as an example of an excellence we might hope to achieve in our own endeavors, a work to push outward the boundaries of awareness, to heighten and widen our experience in a workaday world. Why this artist? Why this work? If Hill Arches is somehow to enrich the lives of the people who work within its influence, on what basis is such a sculpture chosen? This artist, this genial, unassuming Englishman, Henry Moore, is recognized as one of the great moderns, an innovator whose work has inspired wider critical acclaim, perhaps, than the works of any other modern sculptor. Art galleries, museums, and private collectors prize the monumental conception and the power of his carvings in wood and stone, and the majesty of his elemental bronzes. His works are among the most impressive sculptural achievements of our time. Furthermore, this particular artist brings to his art an element which strikes a responsive chord in the imaginations of those accustomed to the open vistas of the American Middle West. For Moore conceives of sculpture not as cabinet pieces confined to small artificial spaces, but as art standing freely on the earth, under a spacious sky. Hill Arches. Moore gave this work its name because, as the idea for it was taking shape in miniature, he visualized it when completed as crowning a low knoll outside the window of his studio in Hertfordshire. At the time of its acquisition, Hill Arches was Moore's major work in progress, assumed to be a possible culmination of all that he had done before. What better piece to live with, to have ever near at hand than the one the artist himself had chosen to keep for his own, one he wanted within view. As the expertise involved in transforming Hill Arches from an artist's concept to a finished reality progressed, Moore continued to watch over the details of its development, designating the foundry in Berlin where Hill Arches would be forged, and journeying there to superintend the finishing, making sure that the scars from its fiery creation were smoothed away and that the surface was properly buffed and textured. Hill Arches had its first public display in the Tiergarten Park in Berlin. Awed by the reputation of the sculptor, adults generally viewed it from a respectful distance, discussing it in quiet tones. There were others, though, who did not let an artist's reputation stand in their way, who knew that art is to live with, and that it is quite all right to put it to use in the enjoyment of a richer, fuller life. While Hill Arches was being completed, preparations were underway for art to join architecture in providing a creative setting for industrial accomplishment. The selected site had been gently rounded to make a low hill similar to the one in Hertfordshire. With its base in readiness, the 4-ton masterwork, which had already traveled by ship and by truck in its journey from Berlin to the Middle West, was now about to become airborne. Its elements were so massive that it was necessary to separate the arches to transport them. Temporarily unlocked from their dynamic relationship, they were taken one after the other toward the place prepared for them. With much noise, but with great deftness, the hovering sky crane lowered each part into place. And then lifted away and was gone. The thrashing in the willows ended. The stillness returned to the surface of the lake. What had been momentarily taken apart was now rejoined, brought back together again. Men whose skills had largely been put to use in fashioning machinery would be the first to appreciate the link between work and the work of art. Had not their talents been joined with those of Henry Moore? In a sense, wasn't it true that Hill Arches was theirs as well as his? The acquisition of a major work of art is a cause of celebration, whether in London, Amsterdam, or Washington. It is no less of an event in Moline, Illinois. On the day of the dedication, there were the usual little speeches, but it is doubtful if many of those present could express all that they felt. Like the people of Berlin before them, they were reserved, almost silent in the presence of Hill Arches. It was as if those involved were caught up in the hesitancy of an unfamiliar experience. Running through their minds may have been the questions, what is it? What is it supposed to mean? But the answers lay hidden in abstractions. Though obviously drawn to the work, many people kept their reactions for the most part veiled, indefinite, tentative, unwilling perhaps to risk voiced responses which might not be the right ones, the socially correct reactions. Yet had the artist himself been there, he might have reassured them. For Moore neither wants nor expects his work to be appraised lightly, to have its significance plumbed in an instant. As Henry Moore himself has said,
I think about sculpture all the time. I even dream about it. And if, as a result, I were only to produce something that everyone immediately understood, I would not have been thinking very profoundly.
If Moore were here, he would invite us to move around the work. As he explains,
making a sculpture in two pieces means that as you walk around it, one form gets in front of the other in ways you cannot foresee. And you get a more surprising number of different views than when looking at a monolithic piece.
Finally, Moore, if he were here, could verify what our own observation has suggested.
The whole basis of my reaction to form and my understanding of it is fundamentally related to the human body.
The curves and hollows of the sculpture, although never detailed or definite enough to give us a rationally precise picture, nevertheless do give us more than vague suggestions of form. And if the emotions aroused in grasping the artist's intent could be expressed in words, we would have no need for sculpture. Hill Arches would have been a poem, or an aria, or a symphony. But, as in life itself, the meaning changes as we alter our perspective. Is this arch a brutal thrust of maleness? Or is it the soft, warm curve of a mother's arm cradling her young? Is this the aggressiveness of man or the passivity of woman? Or is it both, coupled together eternally in the oneness of the human condition? We do not know. But as we continue to live with Arches, as we ponder it and wonder, as we let its voluptuous curves and mysterious hollows make themselves felt, we may come in time to another realization, perhaps the realization toward which More was leading us all along. It is not art's function to answer questions, but to raise them. For only as we ponder the questions which art asks can we come to a greater awareness of ourselves.